Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya.
Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with Thomas Again's Sanskrit Made Easy. And we are up to chapter 14. So let's have a look at chapter 14 and see what's in chapter 14. Okay, so chapter 14. So the topics that are covered in chapter 14 are the alphabet, meaning sandhi rules, right? Up until now, we've been using sandhi charts, and now he's beginning to introduce the rules. And the rules will be there for Visarga. Visarga is the H with the dot under it, if we all remember. And it's a sort of a different letter than some of the other letters in the alphabet. So how do we do that? Especially, how do we use Visarga, especially at the end of a word? How does that react with the beginning of the next word? So that's the rules of sandhi for Visarga. So it's called Visarga sandhi. So we're going to cover Visarga sandhi. The grammar, we're going to actually introduce a new tense here, the imperfect active. Imperfect is a past tense. And we're going to talk about prefixes for verbs, verbal prefixes. Then we're going to, in the vocabulary, we're going to get some more verbs, right? Up until now, we've mostly had parasmaipada verbs that had these active endings. And then we've had also now, we've had introduced in the last few lessons, we've had verbs that have middle endings. We also came to understand they're called atmanepada verbs. And we've also understood that there's a third type of verb called an ubhaypada verb, right? Or a root that takes both endings, can take either ending, both the active and the middle. And then further on, we'll learn not just about the active and the middle, but also how to form the passive, if anybody understands what the passive means. And we'll talk about that later when it comes up. Okay, so let's continue on. Okay, so now we will memorize the sandhi rules for words ending in Visarga. So these rules were presented in the charts in lesson 9. Both charts in lesson 9 present the same rules, but it will be easier to follow the structure of the second chart on page 111 if we know the rule. So while the first word ends in Visarga, the second word may begin with any letter of the alphabet. Notice that the chart breaks the alphabet into 3 parts. So if we look back at that chart, we don't have to look at it necessarily. Maybe he'll show it here. So the chart is arranged according to which section of the alphabet the second word begins with. So here is one way of dividing the alphabet in order to learn these rules. So we have A, vowels, right? B, voiced consonants. And remember, voiced consonants are those ones which are also called soft consonants, in which more vibration of the vocal cords is the last 3 in every line of the alphabet, in every line of the 25 main consonants of the alphabet, the last 3 are considered voiced consonants. So g, g, ng, j, j, nya, d, d, na, d, d, na, and ba, ba, ma. These are all voiced consonants like that. So, and then unvoiced consonants, which are the others. And the reason that he's put it like this is because if we fill in the blanks here that he's given, here it's pretty obvious. We could fill in the blanks e, u, ri, right? Ri, a, I, o, ow. That will be the vowels, right? So all these blanks, all these dashes represent an alphabet. I don't know why he didn't just write those in there. Maybe he will as we go on. And then down here we have ka, ka, cha, cha, ta, 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 pa, pa, and sha, sha, sa. And here we have, on this side, we have ga, ga, nga, ja, ja, nya, da, da, na, da, da, na, ba, ba, ma, and yara lava, the semivowels, right? And ha, I believe. Okay. Okay. So if we continue on. So now, if the second word begins with a vowel, right? So let's say we're talking now about Visarga Sandhi, right? The Sandhi rules when a word ends in Visarga. Very rarely a word may have Visarga inside it, that H with a dot inside it, but we're just talking about when. Right now, we're just talking about when the Visarga, it comes at the end of the word. So the next word, if the next word begins with a vowel. So if the next word begins with a vowel, the second word begins with any of the following: e, ri, a, I, o, ow. That's all the verb, all the vowels that we know, right? So if the first word ends in short a, Visarga, and the second word begins with short a, then the short a, Visarga, changes to o, and then the short a is deleted and marked by an apostrophe in Roman script, right? Or an avagraha. We can think of avagraha as the Vedic, the Devanagari apostrophe, the avagraha symbol in Devanagari. And here's the examples, right? So we have the first word, whatever it is, right, ending in short a Visarga, and then the second word starting in a short a, and then that equals, after Sandhi rules are applied, after the Visarga Sandhi rules are applied, that the short a Visarga turns into an o, and this a is deleted, and instead we put a apostrophe here in the Roman script. If we do it in Devanagari, we have here, he's given a full example. I don't know why he didn't give the same example in the Latin, but anyway, the Roman. So Ramaha plus atra. So atra is a short a, right? Ramaha is a short a Visarga at the end of the first word, becomes Ramotra. Ramo, and this is the avagraha, this symbol here that comes before the tra, which looks like an English S, right, is the apostrophe. It's the Vedic, the Devanagari apostrophe, which is called avagraha. Okay, so now if the first word ends in short a Visarga and the second word begins with any vowel except for a, short a, that means long a or any of the other vowels, it changes to a. So what happens is basically you're dropping the Visarga, right? Okay, and that's all, and no further Sandhi is done. So we have here an example. The first word ends in short. The first word ends in short a Visarga. The second word ends in a vowel. Begins in a vowel, but it's not a vowel, not a short a, not a short a. You should have written here not a short a, except for a short a. Then it becomes a short a. The short a Visarga becomes a short a, which means we just drop out the Visarga, and then this vowel stays the same. And then we keep a space in between these two words in Devanagari also, right? Let's have a look at an example. So the example in Devanagari is Ramaha agachati. So what have we got? Agachati here is a long a. It's a long a. So it's not a short a. It's a long a. So it belongs to that category of all vowels which are not short a. So we have the short a Visarga in Ramaha, followed by the long a in agachati. So then the Sandhi rule makes the Visarga disappear. Nothing else changes. The Visarga just drops. And so Ramaha agachati becomes Rama agachati. Now, just remember, we don't apply any further Sandhi rule to this. Once we've applied a Sandhi rule, that's it. We stop there. Because somebody may look at this and they may say, oh, look at Rama agachati. Why don't we put the two A's together and make it Rama agachati? No. That will be putting Sandhi on top of Sandhi. We don't do that. So we just do it once and that's it. That's the result. Okay, so there's some examples. The third thing here. Okay, so what if we happen, instead of a short a Visarga at the end of the first word, we have a long a Visarga. And the second word begins with also a vowel, any vowel. Then the long a Visarga changes to long a. So again, the Visarga just drops out, right? So here's the example in Latin, in Roman text. right? Long A Visarga plus any vowel, right? And that means any vowel, short A, long A, any other vowel beginning the second word, the Visarga just drops out, right? So here's the example in Devanagari, Naraha, which is nominative plural of Naraha, right? A man, right? Men. So Naraha and iti, Naraha and iti. So iti begins with I or I, right? Short I, and therefore because it's a long A Visarga followed by a vowel in the second word, right? The Visarga just drops out. Okay, so here's another rule here. So if the first word ends in any other vowel before the final Visarga. Okay, so we covered a couple of instances where the short A Visarga is followed by short A Visarga is followed by short A, or the short A Visarga is followed by any other vowel. The second thing is when we have a long A Visarga, which is followed by any vowel. So we've got three rules of Visarga Sandhi that we've covered so far. The fourth thing is, what about if long A Visarga is followed by another vowel, right? The first word, I'm sorry, what if the Visarga in the ending the first word is following some other letter but short A and long A? So that's we have to cover, right? So any other, so short I, long I, short U, long U, right? A, I, O, Al. We don't usually get ri or re coming before Visarga at the end of the first word, right? So it'll be I, u, or A, I, O, Al coming before the Visarga in the first word, right? Then what happens? So if the first word ends in any other vowel before the final Visarga, and the second word begins with any vowel, right? Then the Visarga changes to ra, which is called repa in Sanskrit. So we could say rakara or repa, right? It turns to the letter R, not re, ra, this consonant R. The Visarga turns to the consonant R. So here's an example in the Latin. O. So we have O and Visarga. So oho, right? So Visarga. O Visarga. In the ending of the first word, the beginning of the next word begins with any vowel whatsoever, right? So then it becomes or. It becomes or. And in this case, he's written or and the vowel, and he hasn't left a space in between there. So there's in the Devanagari, there's not going to be a space in this case, right? It's going to become. You can make a space by using a halanta virama, but normally it won't make a space. It'll make the two words in Devanagari become like one word. Okay, so we have Nadyoho. Nadyoho has to do with is a river, right? Nadyoho and Atra. So we have we have a vowel except for short A or long A coming before a Visarga at the end of the first word, and beginning of the second word we have a short A, any vowel, doesn't matter. Okay, it becomes, so Nadyoho Atra becomes Nadyor Atra. Now here in the Roman, he's left a space in between to show the two words, right? In the Devanagari, you notice there is no space. There's no space. Now we could, of course, like I say, we could put a virama or a halanta there, and we could make a space. But this is the normal way it would be written. Nadyoratra, Nadyoratra. Okay. All right. Okay. So now that's the first rule when a non-short A, long A Visarga is at the end of the first word. Now, what if the second word begins? If the second word begins in a voiced consonant, there are three rules. A voiced consonant. Remember what the voiced consonants are, right? Those last three columns. If the second word begins with one of those, so what are they? If it begins with gagana, jajanya, as I was saying above, dadana, dadana, babama, or the semivowels, yaralava, or the aspirate, H, ha. Those are the voiced consonants, also known as soft consonants, right? All right. Okay, so if the first word ends in short a visarga, it becomes o, right? Right, and plus if the short a is followed by a voiced consonant, So up until now, we were dealing with visarga at the end of the first word, and we were dealing with vowels coming at the beginning of the second word. Now, not all words start with vowels. So here he's talking about the second word. So we covered all of those instances. Now he's talking about the second word could start with a consonant. So what if it starts with a voiced consonant? If it starts with a voiced consonant, there's a change. If it starts with an unvoiced consonant, there won't be any change. So here, the voiced consonant, right? Or there may be in regards to some unvoiced consonants like the sibilants, the S's, there may be an optional change, right? But anyway, we'll get to that. So the voiced consonants, when the short a visarga is followed by the voiced consonant, right? Okay, so then we know the short a visarga, just like it was before, in front of a vowel, it becomes in front of a vowel, it becomes o, right? So the short a visarga becomes o, and the voiced consonant stays as it is, right? So here we have the example: Ramaha, short a visarga. Second word begins with g, right? In gachati, right? G is a voiced consonant, so Ramo gachati. Ramo gachati. Okay, easy. Okay, so the next thing is, what about a long a visarga? A long a visarga, it becomes long a. So just the same as if it was a vowel, right? So if the second word was beginning with a vowel, or a long a, let's say, right? Long a visarga followed by a voiced consonant becomes long a voiced consonant, right? So we have naraha is the example. Naraha, plural, right? Followed by gachati. So long a visarga followed by a voiced consonant ga. So then the visarga just drops out. So we have nara gachanti, right? Okay, so now if the first word ends in any other vowel before final visarga, right, and the visarga becomes r, unless the second word begins with an r. Okay, so here we go. So we're only talking about voiced consonants starting a word, right? So again, if we have o visarga at the end of the first word, followed by a voiced consonant starting the second word, it becomes or and the voiced consonant. Again, he didn't show any space here in the Roman, in the Latin. So we're not expecting any space in the Devanagari either. Okay, so narayoho, right? O visarga followed by gachati. Ga in gachati is a voiced consonant, right? So we have narayor gachati, and in the Roman he has left a space, and in the Devanagari we don't see a space. Excuse me. So a double R does not occur, right? So this is his caveat up here. His in brackets, his little exception here. He says double R does not occur in Sanskrit. Okay, so if you ever see a double R, it must be a typo. Yeah. So unless the second word begins with R, is this caveat, is this rule up here. So then what happens with the double R, right? A double R does not occur. If the second word begins with R, the first R is dropped, and the preceding vowel made long if it is short. Okay, so he says, note that the last two rules, 2 and 3, are similar to the previous rules, 3 and 4, for second words beginning with a vowel. So, C, right? So we talked about A, which was the vowels. We talked about rules for visarga and words beginning with vowels. We talked about B, right? The B section of the alphabet, which was his voice consonants. So ending with Visarga and beginning with voice consonants. And now we're going to look at hard consonants or unvoiced consonants, right? The third group, the second word, begins with unvoiced consonant. For this group, the rules are the same when the first word ends in short A Visarga, long A Visarga, or any other vowel before Visarga. So they're much easier. So there are four rules. Okay, if the second word begins with ka, cha, ta, pa, or any of the S's, any of the sibilants, right? So we've got sha, sa, or sha, or sa, right? And he's got end of line here. End of line. End of line means here he's putting this end of line, meaning if it's the end of a line, if there's a punctuation mark like a dunda, single dunda, or a double dunda, which represent a comma or a full stop in or period in Sanskrit, where we take a breath, right? So he's inserted that too. So if that also comes after the Visarga, right? Then if the second word begins with cha, the Visarga with any vowel preceding it changes to palatal S, sha, right? For example, short A Visarga followed by cha, right, becomes ascha. Short A Visarga becomes ascha. So here's the Devanagari. Ramaha and cha becomes ramashcha. And here we see he's left a space in the Roman, but in the Devanagari, it all blends together. So if the second word begins with the cerebral ta, right, then the Visarga of the first word changes to the cerebral S. So here we've got when followed by a palatal becomes a palatal S. When followed by a cerebral becomes a cerebral S. So there's a bit of a pattern here we can understand. So short A Visarga followed by cerebral da, right, becomes ashta, right? So here's the Devanagari. Ramaha plus tika becomes ramashtika. Okay, and then the same thing for the dental S, the regular dental S. If the second word begins with ta or ta, which are dentals, right, then it becomes a dental S. The Visarga becomes a dental S. So here we have short A Visarga followed by ta becomes asta. And here in the Devanagari, Ramaha followed by tatra becomes ramastatra. Okay, and he's shown a space between the two words in the Roman, but not in the Devanagari. So the above three rules might best be learned visually using the Devanagari script. In each case, the Visarga becomes a sibilant that corresponds to the following letter. So whether palatal, cha, retroflex, or cerebral, ta, or dental, ta, right? So here's what we end up with. This is what we end up with, these combinations. So here we have the Visarga followed by cha or cha. It becomes this conjunct in Devanagari. This is why we see these conjuncts in Devanagari all the time, is because of these sort of sandhis. And we get these two sandhis here when it's cerebral followed by cerebral, and these two when we get followed by dental. Yeah. So okay, so we have those. So so that's that rule. So all other unvoiced consonants, ka, pa, sha, sa, pause, the Visarga just stay as a Visarga. So it just stays as a Visarga. It doesn't change in case the second word starts with ka, pa, or any of the S's, right? It stays the same. Anyway, optionally it may change with the S's, but let's see. Okay, so short A Visarga plus a word beginning with ka becomes short A Visarga with ka, with a space, no problem. So let's see an example of that. Ramaha Kutra becomes Ramaha Kutra. Same thing. Okay, that's easy to remember. Okay, so that is those are the rules for Visarga Sandhi. If we can't remember all the rules right away, we can still look at the chart. We can just look at the chart and we can get the answer right away by looking at the chart. Not a problem. Okay, so now he's going to talk about prefixes. Now, verbal prefixes are called upasargas, right? So are placed before verbs to modify the basic meaning of the verb. They are used much like verbal prefixes in English, such as receive and perceive. So we have the sieve there, and we have receive or perceive, right? So re and per are these English prefixes that come before sieve. But not normally we don't think of that. We think of these two as being two different verbs like that. So we have already learned one prefix, long A. So when long A comes before gachati, which changes he goes, gachati, to he comes, agachati. Okay, so here's some more additional prefixes that we're going to learn in this lesson. Here are two additional, so upa and prati. So upa means to go towards or to go near, right? Towards or near. So upagachati means he goes towards or he approaches. Prati means to go back or to go against. So pratigachati means he goes back or he returns. Okay, like that. All right, so he's just introduced that. So he's introduced two more upasargas, two more verbal prefixes, which can help us to change the meanings of verbs. Okay, when added to the root of the verb. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a new tense. Up until now, we've been talking about, except for that participle of having done, having chanted, having gone with tva, we haven't talked about anything else but the present tense. So simple present tense. So now we're going to talk about the imperfect, which is a past tense. So the imperfect, and he gives the the word for imperfect that Panini uses, the term is called lung. So lung, Panini has all these different words for the different moods and tenses in Sanskrit, and he calls them lakaras. So kara means a sign, and they're so you've got lun, lin, lun, rin. These are all different tenses. Okay, so this one is called lun. So lun indicates past action. It's traditionally described as action done, not today. Traditionally, it's understood as action done not today. Anadyatana, or in the past. So it's a past action which wasn't done today. So it is formed by putting an augment, right? An augment means some additional piece, some additional letters, right? Letter or letters, which he calls as agama, right? So the augment short a before the present stem. So we understood, first of all, let's go back and let's understand what verbs are. So we have a verbal root, right? For example, boo was maybe the first word that we learned, to be, right? Boo, to be. Or gutch, to go, right? So boo and gutch become gutcha and bhava. Gutcha and bhava are not the root, but they are the stem. First the root, and then the root is modified to become a stem, and the stem has endings added onto it, and then it becomes a full verb, right? So we have, for example, boo, bhava, t, bhava c, bhava whatever. We have gutch, we have gachati, gachataha, gachanti, like this, right? So gutch. So, gotcha. So here we're going to add a short a to the stem as a marker, right? The a is this short a, which is added to the stem before the suffix, before the verbal ending, is a marker of the past tense. And in Sanskrit, that is called bhuta. Bhuta means past, and karana means cause. So it means a marker of the past tense, bhuta karana. Okay, so the imperfect uses slightly different endings called secondary endings, or the imperfect endings. For example, right? A plus gacha plus T becomes agachat. He went. A plus vada, right? To speak, right? Plus T becomes avadat. Okay. All right. So this augment here, this augment is coming. The augment they're placing is before the stem. Placing it before the stem. Okay, before the present stem. That's the marker, is put before the present stem. Excuse me if I said it was after the present stem. Okay, so here we go. Easy thing to do is just, that's very technical what he just said. Just learn the verb and learn the past tense of it, and then all the other verbs like it will go in the same way. So we just learn a paradigm, an example verb. We have this verb gutch, right? So here it is, the formation of the imperfect. So we have third person, second person, first person, singular, dual, and plural. Agachat, agachatam, agachan, agachaha, agachatam, agachata, agacham, agachava, agachama. And that is the imperfect tense of gutch, not agach, gutch, right? To go. Note that the imperfect active endings are listed on page 317. Okay, so if you have a book, you can go to 317 and look at that. Here are the endings for the present indicative that we have already learned. Notice that the imperfect has similar endings, but shorter. Similar, but shorter. So we have gachati, gachataha, gachanti, gachasi, gachataha, gachata, gachami, gachavaha, gachamaha. Okay, so, but we see that it's a little shorter, right? Okay. So the imperfect puts the augment a after the prefix, but before the stem. Okay, so if there's a prefix involved, right? If you want to put that verb in the imperfect, you have to put the augment before the stem, but after the prefix, right? The upasarga. So study these examples. So for example, prati, right, is a upasarga. It's a prefix we just learned. So prati plus a plus gach plus the ending ta, which is the third person singular ending of the imperfect tense, right? So we have prefix plus augment plus stem plus ending becomes the full word, right? So we have prati plus a, right? And by sandhi, that's becomes pratya, right? The I changes to a Y, right? The I changes to the semi-vowel equivalent, which is ya, right? So pratya, right? Plus prati plus a, prati, which with a Y, plus a, then plus gach, then gacha, then plus t, right? So pratyagachat is the full verb. That is, he returned. He returned, because pratigach means to return, right? So if we wanted to say it in present tense, it'd be different, but we're saying it in imperfect tense, which is past. So he returned. And remember, it should not, it's an action which is happening not today, usually. Okay. So here we have another example. So upagach means to approach, right? So if we want to say in the past, he approached, we have to say upa, plus we have to add the past tense augment, a, plus we have to add gacha. So upa agachat, right? Upa agachat. Now, upa ends in an a, so the augment is short a. Two short a's together make a long a, right? Followed by gacha, followed by t, put it all together, and we get upa agachat. Then we have another example. So another example is, right? We have the upasarga, which we knew from the very beginning, the long a, which makes going into coming, right? Which changes the meaning of the verb, right? So we have the long a, which is the upasarga, right? Followed by the short a, which is the augment for and is the marker of the past tense, followed by gotcha, followed by a short a here, and right, which would be the first person singular ending, right? Becomes agacham. So often a prefix may affect whether a verb takes active or middle endings. Okay. So the dictionary will indicate which endings should be used. So when we look in the dictionary, right, we should see usually the third person singular present tense is given, and that will either be with an active or with a middle ending. And we can also see the little letters a, u, or p next to the verb, right? We may even see which conjugation the verb is in, right, in a dictionary, but we'll certainly see A for Atmanepada, P for Parasmaipada, or U for Ubaipada, which means that they can take both endings like that. All right, so let's have a look at the vocabulary. So the vocabulary we have, here we have an upasarga long A, followed by the root ni, which takes active endings. So we have an example is third person singular present tense, anayati, he brings. Then we have the upasarga upa plus gum, also takes active endings, right? These are all what we call parasmaipada, taking active endings. Upagachati, he goes towards or he approaches. Then we have gup, right, which is the root, right? He isn't giving here stems. He's just giving the root, and he's giving the full third person singular present tense. So gup becomes gopayati, right? So I don't know if that he is explained here how to form I'm not sure that whether we explained here how to form a stem from a root by guna and vriddhi. So the guna of you becomes o, so gu becomes go, so gup becomes gopayati, right? He protects. Then we have ni, which we saw up here, ni. Ni is ni. It's said here to be active, and it's said down here to be ubaipada. So he's got it's interesting because he's said that it's both here. So we should see what that asterisk says down below. So ni, there's ni is ubaipada when it means to lead and not to bring. Okay, so ni, well, ani would be bring. So ani. Oh, here's an example of when you add an upasarga, it becomes it becomes only parasmaipada and not ubaipada. Okay, so here we have ni, which is ubaipada by itself, ni, and ni nayati. I think we already learned this word. It's ubaipada, so it can be nayati or it can be nayate. Both active and middle endings can be added. So, and in both cases they mean he leads. So then we have pa. Pa is active, parasmaipada, right? And it becomes pibati, he drinks. So then we have prati, again, an upasarga, a prefix added to gum, right? Prati plus the root gum, which is parasmaipada, or active, takes active endings, right? So it becomes prati gachati, he goes back or he returns. Right, then we have bud, again, bud like gup, right? We see the guna of the strengthening of the vowel in the root when it's added, when it becomes a stem, and here we see the final word. Bu becomes bo, so bud becomes bod, and plus ati becomes, so it's also ubaipada, So it could be bodati. It could also be bodate. It's interesting. He doesn't show in the Roman here with nayati and nayate. He shows only nayati in the Devanagari and only bodati in the Devanagari. He should actually show nayate and bodate here also, if he's going to say that this is ubaipada, taking both. Anyway, I would put both in there if it's ubaipada. Okay, he knows. Bud, to know. Okay, so then the last one is has. Has means to laugh, right? So it's parasmaipada, active endings. So hasati means he laughs. Very simple. So the gerund forms, remember we had this idea of the gerund making a verb into a gerund, which is like a verbal noun. Which means in the case of the twa endings, it was having done, having been, having chanted, having gone, like that. So the gerund forms for each of these verbs is listed in the back of the text, pages 312 to 314. Remember that if a verb has a prefix, right, prefix, which we just learned about, upasargas, right, it forms a gerund with ya and not twa. Okay, so for example, if it has a prefix, okay, so pratigachati would be gatva, pratigatva. It will be not pratigatva, but it will be pratigatya, right? So pratigatva would be wrong, right? Because of prati, because it has an upasarga. Okay, so note now up here we noted there were two asterisks here that the verb ni, ani, which means to bring, and the verb ni, which means to lead, both come from the same root, ni. And here, when it means to bring, it's got active or parasmaipada endings. When it means to lead, it can take active or middle endings, parasmaipada or atmanepada endings. And therefore, he says here, note that ni and bud are ubaipada, but ani is only active, is only parasmaipada. Okay, so ni and bud here are ubaipada, right? They can take both active and middle endings, right? Parasmaipada, atmanepada endings. But when you add an upasarga or prefix before ni, right, it can only take active endings.
Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Narayanaya.